but we are not offering it as a recording to coaches. So coaches do need to be in to benefit from it. Again, there will be the questions that require answering in kettlebell so that the integrity of the courses that Swim Coach offers is maintained. So give it a day or two and we'll have the questions up online, and then you can earn your CPD point. Right, I'm just going to share the results with Rowena on who we're dealing with, but we're all coaches. So those that did answer, everybody is a coach. Okay. Right, I'm going to hand over to Rowena. A quick introduction. She is an associate professor in sports science at UKZN. She started working with SAIDS over 20 years ago as a tester, and now in the last 10 years has moved over to the education side of SAIDS. So I'm going to hand over to her. Enjoy, and shout in the chat if you need any assistance.
Great.
Right, thanks, Rowena.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's good to know that it's just coaches, so I don't have to go through all the nitty-gritty, which I usually do with the athletes. I'm going to turn my camera off because I will be sharing a screen. Since we have a really small group here, I wanted to be more interactive. So if it's fine with you all, if you have any questions, you can just come in and ask. Okay. Is that okay with everyone? All good. You better not be like my students where I talk and then it's silence. I don't know if you're there, if I'm talking to myself as well. Okay, so as mentioned, this is a presentation which we do with either coaches, students, athletes. It's a whole host of people that are involved with the athletes or the sport. So it's not necessarily just tailor-made for coaches. We even speak to the medical staff, like the physios, the doctors, pharmacists as well. Okay. All right, let's get going. I know some are still coming in, but the early parts are just basic administrative parts, if you want to say. All right, so as you'll all know, I mean, as coaches, the anti-doping is governed by WADA. WADA is the World Anti-Doping Agency. And then each country has their own doping agencies. So if you look at it, the South African one is SAIDS, the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sport. So whatever happens at any competition or any testing site, or whether it's in competition or out of competition, it's the same process everywhere. Right. So as mentioned, I was also a doping control officer. So I was involved with testing locally. And even if we traveled overseas, the testing procedures were all the same. So it's a very standardized process, which I'm sure you all are aware of that. You all are also aware that if your athlete is called in to be tested, you are allowed to go with your athlete. You can accompany your athlete as well. Even if they are over the age of 18, you are allowed to go with them as well. It's always good to accompany athletes because sometimes they may forget about certain things, what to say. They may forget to declare certain items that they've taken and so on. So it's good practice to be with your athlete if they are called in for a doping test. Okay. As I said, if there's any questions or anything, you can just shout in. I'm not looking at the chat box or anything like that, so you can just add that in or talk if you'll need to. Okay. All right. Again, I mean, I'm not going to go through all of this, but everybody is very aware of the Lance Armstrong case and so on. It was in the media. And because of this case, a lot has changed in doping as well, and how some of the rules have changed. Especially if you'll remember in the past, if there was a doping offense, it was only the athlete who got the sanction, if you want to call it. But that has slightly changed now, where, for example, if you are a coach, you can also be implicated in some way. So what happens there, for example, say if you were involved in a doping scandal, because you can't ban coaches, what happens is the coach is still allowed to coach, but their athletes now will be tested more frequently. So you know what, no athlete really wants to be dope tested regularly, so that's kind of the stigma attached if you are a coach that was involved with doping. Okay, again, I'm not going to go through the good values. I mean, as coaches, I'm sure you'll understand all of this and chat to your athletes about that. All right, so some of the education topics, there's a whole host of them, but I'm going to go through the ones which I think are more relevant for coaches. Okay. All right, so the anti-doping rules. This, I think, is one of the most important ones because lots of athletes, coaches, or anyone actually involved in doping always think that the only thing that causes somebody to test positive is there's a banned substance in their urine or blood, but there's actually a lot more to it. And I think lots forget about that. So all this information is on the website, as in the SAID's website. There's a whole lot of booklets and information if you need there, as well as on the WADA website. So it's really up to you how much information you want to get. Okay, right. So I'm sure most of you all have heard about Adele, the online or e-learning platform. So this is where lots of athletes and even coaches go on and register for these sessions or courses. It's actually really good to do it. I've actually done the coaching one. It's quite in-depth, not as easy as you think it is, but it's well worth it. You learn quite a bit. So all you need to do is go online onto the WADA website. You'll see the link for the education bit there, and you register. It's free. There's no cost. So you register as a coach, and the certificate is valid for 24 months. Okay. But also these talks help with that. So I know at certain times, not all athletes are able to do the online learning. So coaches have the options of contacting SAIDs and getting us, as in the educators, to come in and educate their athletes. So that is an option as well. And I actually strongly believe that it's a lot better for an educator like myself to actually come in and speak to your athletes, because lots of them have lots of questions they want to ask. And, if it's an online course, it's just a straightforward Q&A, there's no what if, because lots of them ask questions. I mean, it may sound silly, but they want to know, but they're afraid to ask it. But when we have the talks with them, some of them are quite open, and they want to know about what's happening and what's allowed and what's not. So I would actually recommend that as coaches, if you feel that your athletes or a group of athletes or even parents, we need to speak to them, we can have these online webinars, but face-to-face are obviously a lot better as well. All right. So as I mentioned, you can go onto Adele, you can register. It's pretty straightforward. The links, you go to the e-learning and the courses are there. Okay. Any questions so far? Anything? All good. Great. Okay. Now, here we come to what is a doping offense. Okay. So this is when they refer to ADRV, which is anti-doping rule violation. So that's obviously somebody doing something wrong, and it's not always just been tested positive. So there are quite a few rule violations, which lots of athletes and sometimes even coaches are not aware of. So let's go with it. So the first one is the most obvious, which is the main one everybody knows. They've been caught, the athlete is tested positive, there's a banned substance in their urine or blood, or a doping method, like, the blood doping that was used. That's also an illegal method. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is the use or attempted use. So this, for example, say an athlete is at a swim competition, and if they now try to use something, or they're attempting, so they haven't actually injected themselves or eaten it or whatever it is, that is also a doping violation. So if somebody has to see them and report it at an event, that's a doping offense. Okay, so your athletes need to be clear about that as well. Lots of them are unaware about that. Okay. The other one is, which is an important one, is refusing to submit a sample. So lots of athletes say, oh, but it's my right, I can say I don't need to be tested. Why must I be tested? You must remind your athletes that because they are part of the federation, the swimming federation, or whatever sport they are in, part of the rules are that you will abide by the doping regulations. And if you are to be tested, then you need to have it be tested. But if they suddenly say, if I'm the doping officer, I come up to your athlete and say, I'm Rowena Naidoo, I'm from SAIDS, you've been selected to do a test. If the athlete says, no, sorry, I refuse to submit this, I don't want to do this test, it's an automatic positive. And that's a straight 4-year ban. So please inform your athletes, whether it's an in-competition test or out-of-competition test. So I'm assuming you all are aware of those two types of testing. In competition during the actual testing, the actual event, and then out of competition could be anytime during the day. Okay, they could be tested or night. Okay, so those are the two types there. The second one, this was actually quite interesting because usually we don't, this is what they call failure to file your athlete's whereabouts. So if you have athletes that participate at national level, and I'm sure, I know in swimming, there are quite a few athletes that are on this registered testing program where they get tested at least once a month. And because they are tested so regularly, we need to know where they are. So they fill in a whereabouts. I do speak about this later. And what happens is the athletes need to explain where they are each hour. Basically, it's from like 8 o'clock in the morning. They'll either say 8 to 9, I'm training, I'm at Kings Park swimming pool. 9 to 10, I'm at the gym, or, it's just an idea of where they are, especially if they're traveling overseas. Because what happens if we go in and ask to test them and we rock up at their house and they said, I'm at home at 8 in the evening and you're not there, that's already regarded as a 1 missed test. And if you have 3 of those, that's an automatic positive. I actually never knew there were any athletes that failed to do this or were tested positive. But strange enough, yesterday I had a one-on-one talk with a previous athlete who was banned for 2 years because he didn't do this. So it is happening, so he also, because he didn't submit his whereabouts, he got a 2-year ban and now he's back in the sport, or he wants to come back. So we have the talks with the athletes as well. So please tell your athletes if they're on this testing program. Okay, the next one is tampering with the process. This is pretty straightforward. While the doping process is going on, if they're trying to interfere with the process, bribing officials and so on. In South Africa, nobody bribes us. They bribe, I think, in everything else, but I've never been attempted to be bribed, if you want to say, when it comes to testing. But yeah, that is definitely a doping offense. Okay, even sometimes we have athletes that try to hide from us. We want to test them, they're running away, their coaches are covering up for them, and it's quite crazy, So that is also a doping offense. All right. The 6th one is the possession of a prohibited substance. So if you've got something on you, that obviously is an offense as well. The 7th one is the trafficking. So straightforward here, trying to sell and transport banned substances. Administering or attempting to administer. So again, here, if you're at an event or whatever it is, and if you are administering the substance to yourself or even to somebody else, that's a doping offense. Okay. The 9th one is complicity. This is where you're trying to cover up a situation where you know that there's something happening and you try to cover up with that. We've actually had a couple of cases of that are under investigation at the moment. And strange enough, some of it is with swimming. I actually know a case where there's swimming involved. Yeah. So just be aware of that as well. Okay. The 10th one is the prohibited association with the sanctioned athlete. So this one can be a bit controversial because I know athletes are not always very happy with this. So this means, for example, say I've been banned for 2 years. So I've had a previous offense and I'm banned. any other athletes, so say your swimmers now who are still with you, if they now interact with this banned person, they will be in trouble. So the idea is not to have your athletes associated with any athletes who are currently under a ban. The reason for that, obviously, they're looking at it, it's not good practice. Your athletes could be influenced and so on. So, it's a bit of a touchy situation at times, because, for example, what if an athlete was banned because they didn't file their whereabouts? So although it's still bad practice, he did something wrong. It's not the worst where, he was taken a ban, substance and so on. But at the end of the day, your athletes need to be aware that associating with anyone that is banned or currently under their ban is a doping offense. Okay. All right. And there's a new one that has come in, and this is what they call the whistleblower protection. So this is here if you know somebody that's, okay, let me just give you some background. What we have is like, I don't know if you'll watch CSI and all those programs where there's investigations going on. So we actually have like a hotline where athletes, coaches, parents, anyone can call the association or inform SAIDS that there's a possibility, or or you think we should say, that somebody is doping. So actually calls come through, we log all of that, and there are investigations that happen. So it's a proper process, if you want to say, that goes on. But now if you know somebody who's informing us, and if you try to scare them or frighten them or whatever it is, that is also a doping offense. So there's a lot of other offenses than the usual, I have a banned substance in my urine or blood. Okay, any questions? I know I just talk in there. So if you look at it, there's 11 doping offenses. You need to be familiar with them as well as your athletes. Okay, questions, anything? All good. Okay, great. Next one, let's keep going. Okay, just some stats for you guys. South Africa is ranked number 14 for anti-doping rule violations in the world, which is pretty bad. This is not something you want to be proud of. So it does show that our athletes are, high on the list there. Positively, swimming is very good. There was just one rule violation. Remember, this is just the 2019, so we would get an updated one soon. Okay. All right. Okay, so what happens when your athlete is tested positive? So everybody gets to know about it. It's actually posted on the SAIDS website. Remember, all federations globally, if it's not necessary swimming, even other sporting federations have access to this. Because what athletes sometimes think is, okay, I'm banned in swimming, maybe I can try another sport. It's actually, you banned in all codes of sport, participating internationally or so on. So just to give you an example, you will get the person's name. Because this athlete was a young athlete, his name is not there. The sport is there, what they've taken, the details, and the ban. Remember, I just told you there was one for swimming. This is what it was. So the athlete's name is there, the code. When they talk about the presence or prohibited substance or its metabolites or markers, I'll explain what that means there. And obviously he's taken steroids, more for the anabolic steroids and so on. So there was a high amount of testosterone and all these others in it. And he's got a 4-year ban. When they refer to markers, so what happens is sometimes athletes, although they take in the steroids, they also take markers or maskers, things that can try to hide the actual substance itself. So we actually test for markers and maskers as well. So it's not that we only just testing for certain drugs, if you want to say, we also test for those substances that athletes use to try and hide them. Okay, so this is quite a long ban, a 4-year ban the swimmer had. Okay, questions, anything? All good. Okay, great. The list. The prohibited list, it's a long list. There's lots of substances that aren't allowed and some that are allowed, obviously. Remember, when we think banned substances, the first thing comes to mind is always, steroids and those type of things. But remember, we test for a whole host of things, from stimulants, cannabinoids, there's a long list of it. So I'm not going to go through all of that. And remember, certain substances are allowed in competition and some are only allowed out of competition, or some it's a combination. So you need to make sure your athletes are aware of what they are taking, if they are taking anything. Okay. All right. I'll speak about supplements because that's a huge thing. And I know swimmers do take supplements, so they need to be aware of what's safe and what's not. Okay. Right. Importantly, this is something I put up here all the time for athletes, and obviously coaches as well, to inform their athletes. Weed, daha, whatever they call it, it is not allowed. Whether it's legal in the country or, whether they're traveling overseas, it's allowed. When it comes to their sport, it is banned. So please tell them, don't take a chance. It is banned. Any type of it, whether it's
all are not allowed.
Sorry? Did somebody say something?
Yeah, Kathy, you want to repeat that?
Yes, sorry, yeah.
And that it's not allowed at all in anything.
In anything, yeah. So whether it's your CBD oils and all of that, I'll talk to you about CBD oils because that's suddenly very popular now, this whole CBD oil story. So any form of cannabis, whether I just tell the athletes, and you should tell them as well, whether they want to try their space muffins, they want a hot box, and, athletes try all these funny things, recreationally, they must avoid it. And they always ask, how long will it be in my system? The one thing I tell them, and you should also tell them, is it depends. Each person is individual. It's how your body metabolizes whatever you put in it. So it could last 1 day, 2 days, a week, a month. It's individual. So the best thing is to stay away from it. Okay. You don't want to get a ban just for recreational smoking of weed, which actually has no benefit on performance. Because some of them think it helps, but actually there's lots of research that it's negatively affecting athletes. Okay. All right. So we have an online medication check app. So this helps athletes and even coaches or the doctors, whoever's involved with the athletes. What you need to do is, it's part of the SAID's website. You type in the medication name. So here it is important to note that it is the actual medication name that goes in those ingredients. So if an athlete has to put in like USN whey protein, it's not going to pick it up because that's not a proper name. It needs the actual ingredients if you look at it. This is especially important, say if the athlete has the flu. Lots of flu medication and cough syrups especially have banned substances in it. So if your athlete is sick, they go to the pharmacist, they want to get something, they need to check. So they need to take that medication bottle, check the ingredients on it. Or the best case is if they work with a sports doctor, a team doctor, have them, give them information on it. Because we've had cases where athletes suddenly feel a bit of a flu, they go to the pharmacy, pick up something, they're competing in 2 days, they test positive, So that's why these talks and presentations are important for them to know and be aware, because we can't say anymore, oh, I didn't know, you can't plead negligence. It's an automatic 2-year ban, sometimes 4 years. So, just because you made a mistake or you forgot that I need to check my medication, you're going to be banned over something so silly. Okay, so please tell your athletes that. Okay, but I'll speak to you about regulated substances and non-regulated, because that's also very important when it comes to supplements. All right, quickly. This is what they refer to as therapeutic use exemptions, TUEs. I don't know if any of your guys, athletes, have any chronic diseases like asthma and so on, ADHD, things like that. Strange enough, there's always 1 or 2 swimmers who are always asthmatic, because we always say, you know, swimming is good for especially kids when they're young that have asthma. It helps them get through it. But strange enough, lots of swimmers, even when they're older, still have asthma. Any of your guys swimmers have any chronic conditions where they need to take certain medications long term? Not really. Okay, but I want to discuss it quickly so you are aware of this if there's an athlete that comes in. So for example, say if your swimmer has asthma. When somebody has a medical condition like asthma, generally their airways are narrow. Once they take the asthmatic pump, it widens it to normal. So it allows them to be normal like everybody else. But if somebody who's not asthmatic, who takes an asthmatic pump, their airways are normal. Now suddenly they take this asthma pump, or yes, I do see there's somebody here. It widens it and gives them an unfair advantage. So they get more oxygen into their lungs. So if your athlete has asthma or ADHD or whatever medical condition, and they are on any medication, this needs to be verified, because everyone can say I'm asthmatic and get an asthmatic pump. So your athlete needs to apply for something which is called a therapeutic use exemption. And they need to do this in advance because this is some medication they're taking over a period of time. So you apply via SAVES. It's basically a process where we make sure that there's a committee in place of medical doctors as well to make sure that your athlete really has this condition. So, you know, even from them sending their x-rays, their medical history and so on. Because lots of asthma medication and even ADHD medication has got banned substances in it. So we need to verify that your athlete genuinely has a medical condition. There is no other alternative that they have to take. So they have to take this banned substance, but it doesn't give them an extra edge or anything. It just allows them to function normally. And then it's like a tick. Yes, they're allowed to take it. And then your athlete will have to carry this TUE with them when they go for every competition and if they get tested and they need to declare it. Okay, so it's very important if your athletes are taking anything, they need to check up on this. Okay, this also applies to, say your swimmer during one of the competitions badly injured themselves. Sometimes there's, you know, a whole lot of pain. The only thing they need to take is a steroid injection. You all know steroids are bad as well. So they'll apply for a TUE, but that's what they call more of a retrospective one. They already got the injection, and then now we're applying for this because there was nothing we can do at that time. So there's different rules around the TUE, but please get familiar with it. But as was it Kathy that mentioned, your athlete is on something, please apply for the TUE via SAVES. Okay. All right. Some of them are even on, that's why you must ask your athletes what they take. We've had a couple of athletes that are diabetic and they're taking the insulin shots and so on. You know, you don't expect that because they are world-class athletes, but yeah, some of them have these conditions. So please find out. Okay. All right. The next section is supplements. So important, I feel. Lots of athletes, including coaches, parents are unaware of this. So when it comes to items like supplements, traditional medicines, homeopathic medicines, and so on, lots of them, or most of them, I should say, are not regulated substances. Now, let me tell you what that means. If you have to compare, say, your bottle of whey protein, you know, you see these athletes moving with these big bottles, whey protein. And if you compare it to a tablet like Panado, Panado is something that is regulated, meaning it is governed by a medical authority. So if you take the label of your Panado, you know, for the ingredients list, you open it up, it'll tell you 10 milligrams of paracetamol, for example. That is exactly what is in there. So whatever that label says is 100% correct because it is regulated. Whereas substances like your whey protein, they can tell you they've got 20 grams of whey protein in there, they've got other little whatever it is. They could be lying to you. And let me tell you, most of them are lying. It is false advertising. And the reason why they can do that is because there's no governing body or it's not regulated. Sometimes, I'm not sure, sometimes they put a stamp, they put a SAID stamp on it and say, or a WADA stamp. This is endorsed and approved by WADA. There's no drugs in here. It's 100% fine. They are lying. And the reason why they can lie about it is that it's unregulated. It's not governed. So lots of athletes, this is how they get caught, or I should say tested positive, because of what is in their supplements. I mean, if you remember the list I showed you, you saw there were so many rugby ones there. Lots of it was because the steroids were found in their supplements. But the boys come and tell us, but it's saying it's fine. Remember, lots of them were also schoolboys. And there's nothing we can do about it because it's an unregulated substance. So please inform your athletes if they are taking any supplements, they are taking it at their own risk. As much as the label can say it is 100% fine, they are lying about it, or they could be lying about it. I'm not saying everybody lies, but the chances are extremely high. We actually did a study at the university where we tested 20 of the best-selling whey protein. So what we did is we took, the ones in South Africa that are really popular, 20 of the most popular brands that are sold in South Africa, but even you can get them from overseas. And we were testing the content of whey protein. So if they said they had 15 grams, we were testing to see if they really did have 15 grams. And let me tell you, 60% of those products were false. So imagine how much of money athletes are wasting thinking that things are fine here, and yet they're not getting what they paid for. And they are at risk also of being banned if there's a steroid in there. Okay. So as coaches, please inform your athletes. Athletes also feel that, lots of them take those pre-workouts and creatine and so on. They need to know why they're taking it. Lots of them don't know why. They don't do proper research. Tell them reading Men's Health and all these magazines are not proper research. Although the magazines may say we've done a study, they've probably done a study on 10 people. There's no proper validation. So be very careful what they're reading. Tell them, read research journals. Information is so important where they get it from. Okay. Quick one, CBD oils. Again, as I mentioned, these are banned. Do not take any chances with it. Just a quick one with CBD oils. We had a case about 2 years ago. An athlete bought the CBD oil because, now you can buy it from anywhere. It sells freely. She took it, usually you can put a little drop, on your tongue, and then it's supposed to help, So she took it because of anxiety. And what happened within half an hour, he started convulsing. They had to rush her to the hospital and she almost died. That's how bad it was, just because she took this oil. And what we did is we actually took the syringe, we had a little sample of what was left, what she bought. And, the machines, you have all these fancy machines that actually do the test. And what the machine told us was that the results was actually inconclusive. If you get an inconclusive result, it means that whatever is in there is not detectable or toxic, or, you can't read it. So athletes have no idea what is in the product. They're assuming that yes, it's the CBD oil, it'll help with X, Y, Z, but you don't know what's in there because it's not regulated. So please tell your athletes, be careful what you're taking, why you're taking it, do your research. And there's no need to take CBD oils. It's not going to help performance or anything like that. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to go into more details, but here they talk about THCs, which is actually the bad, dangerous, toxic stuff, which is found in CBD oils. Okay. Right. Again, more details about supplements. It's not regulated. There could be false advertising on it. They put all the stamps on, all false. So please be careful. It's a huge money-making industry. So they can have the best bottles, if you want to say, packaging, marketing. Remember, lots of athletes may advertise for certain products, but it doesn't mean they take it. It's a lot of money. I mean, if somebody's going to tell your athlete, I'll pay you 50,000 Rand just for a once-off endorsement. I mean, 50,000 Rand is a lot of money for your athletes, you know? So they'll take it, as in they'll take the money, but they're not necessarily taking the supplement. So that's how others get carried away. I mean, our Sharks rugby team, you know, one of their sponsors is Biogen. And yes, some athletes do take it, but others don't, but they still advertise for it. So also remember that it has a lot to do with marketing and money. Okay. All right. Let's carry on. Okay, just an example here. Remember our rugby player saying he also taken illegal stuff, and he also was via a supplement. So, and he got a straight 4-year ban. Okay, and if you think about it, this is a schoolboy. I mean, he's only like, what, 16, 17? He takes something, not realizing it's got, you know, a steroid in it. Straight 4 years he gets. Okay, sometimes 2 years. It just depends on the situation. Okay. So, as much as I can tell you that supplements need to be taken at your own risk, I can give you all the pros and cons of it. There is a company out there that actually tries to help athletes. Because remember, this is worldwide now. I'm not just talking South Africa. Supplements are taken all over the world. So what this company does is they actually test supplements. But also remember, it's the supplement company itself. So say, for example, it's USN. USN pays these guys to actually carry out these tests. So that means they are quite confident in their product. So for some extent, it's a better option. So what happens here? Okay, so what happens is this company, if there's a batch of products made, they test each batch. So every single product is tested. If they feel that this is drug-free, if you want to say, they put a stamp on it called Informed Sport. So you'll see the stamp on it. The other one they can do is where they do not test every single product in the batch. So what they'll do is they'll maybe take 100 out of the 1,000 and they'll randomly test it. And then if they're happy with those 100 that they tested, they put the stamp called Informed Choice. So these are the two stamps that athletes can look out for if they really want to take products or supplements. So remember, Informed Sport is everything that has been tested in the batch, and Informed Choice is a random selection. Again, you can't hold them liable if something goes wrong, but it is one of the, if you want to say, better options. So it's just some information that we give coaches and athletes as well if they want to take certain products. Okay. Not all products have it, obviously. You got to look, and it's only these stamps, you know, don't, you know, try to find other stamps. These are the two stamps you need to look at. And it is sold, or they are sold at our retailers. I mean, I've seen some in Discam, Clicks, and so on. So you can have a look at that. Okay. All right. Principle of strict liability. This is one thing you got to tell your athlete as well. Whatever they put in their mouth or whatever goes into their body is their responsibility. So whether they, remember, lots of athletes look up to you all as coaches. So the information you get or what you know is very important. But at the end of the day, it's still the athlete's responsibility. So you need to tell them, you know, you also being a coach, they still also have the right to question and ask, because we've had coaches who actually encourage athletes to take banned substances or to go for, you know, they refer to the microdosing of certain supplements or whatever, you know. So it is known. So again, as a coach, you got to make sure you know what information is out there and you are a role model to your athletes as well. So you need to be aware of what's happening around, because sometimes lots of athletes do their own little thing and coaches are very unaware as well. So you need to be aware of what's happening in the doping world and with your athletes. I mean, especially the smoking, the weed, it is so popular. It's a trend now with athletes. not necessarily athletes, it's amongst kids now, children in general. But if you're an athlete, obviously there's more consequences to it. So make sure you are aware of this that's happening and speak to your athletes. Okay, just quickly, the doping test. I'm not going through all the details, but just importantly for when you speak to your athletes about how one can be tested positive. They keep asking, how much do I need in my body? Give them this example, and especially with swimming, they'll clearly understand it. Think of the swimming pool, the Olympic-sized pool. All you have to do is take a teaspoon of a steroid or a banned substance, put it into the pool, the water. The entire pool is now contaminated. So it shows how little bit you need to contaminate all that water. Now imagine how little bit the athlete needs in their body to be tested positive. So I'm sure they'll be able to relate to that. Okay, let's go on. Okay, on the booklets, we've got the whole notification process, how the testing gets done. I'm not going to go through all of that with you guys, but you need to be aware of the process as well, especially if you have younger athletes, that may be nervous about peeing and so on, somebody watching them, but they need to know why all of this happens as well, which I will quickly tell you. Okay, so you do know that your athlete, when they're passing a sample or if they've been selected to do a test, somebody watches them. That somebody is called your doping control officer. So a male doping control officer will watch a male pass a sample and a female with a female. Basically, when they pass the sample, basically it's peed in a cup. We, or the doping control officer, has to look at them or look at them passing the sample. We have to make sure that the urine is coming out of their body. And obviously for many athletes, and if it's the first time, they get very shy. Imagine somebody watching you pee. I can't imagine somebody watching me pee, but as an athlete, this is part of the process and they need to be aware of this. Whether they are 14, 20, 30, 40, this is the process. Somebody's got to watch the pee come out of your body. Okay. But as I mentioned, minors, there's always an athlete accompanying them. But when they are actually passing the sample, the person that accompanies them is not in the room. So it's only between the doping control officer and the athlete. The reason for that is there are strict procedures which we have to follow. If there's a tribunal, that's a case, we have to make sure all our procedures are done the same. It's a standardized procedure done, as I mentioned, locally and internationally. So it doesn't interfere with that process. Okay, as I mentioned, there could also be blood tests. So here you have either a nurse, a doctor, or a phlebotomist that does this blood test. But this is not happens all the time, but it is something that can happen. So your athletes need to be aware that they could be have a blood test. Consequences of doping, I'm quickly going to go through this. You'll know about the sanctions. So a sanction could even just be a warning, depending on the case. So remember, each athlete goes through a tribunal. And then depending on whether it's maybe a first-time offense or whatever it is, the sentence can be reduced. But in saying that, as I mentioned, I spoke to an athlete who was under 18, who took the supplement, who had the steroid in it. He got a straight 2-year ban. I would have thought maybe they'll be more lenient on him. It's the first time, but it doesn't work that way. You need to be aware about supplements and what can happen, that there is a chance that there could be banned substances and you could be banned. So sanction could be for a couple of months to a year, 2 years. Most of them are 4 years. The reason for 4 years is in the past, it was a 2-year, but then what athletes used to do, especially for the Olympics, they'll maybe get caught in one and then they have the opportunity of participating in the next one. Now they want you to learn your lesson. You caught at one Olympic, you're missing the next one. So that's how the 4-year ban has come in there. Depends what they take. It could be a criminal offense. There's lots of health issues related to taking banned substances. And the last one is status, their social status. Everybody knows about it. It's quite embarrassing to the athlete, to the coach, parents, everyone involved, even the sporting federation, that this athlete has tested positive. So that's why it's so important as well for the federations to be up to date with information and ensuring that their athletes and parents and whoever it is get this information as well. Okay. Not going through details with you on this, but this is what I do with the kids, especially, you know, about steroids, what can happen, side effects, like man boobs. This guy had actually an abscess that popped. You know, so there's lots of little things, and, you know, they'll tell you about the roid rage. And the one thing that the guys, you know, always get, if you want to say scared about, is they shrinking testicles. You know, that's all about being a macho guy. And the other bit as well, which I like to tell them about, is you take in all of this, you want to get bigger and stronger and look good, you know, to attract the girls. But when it really comes to you performing, it's not working. They can't get an erection. So, you know, things like that, sometimes you got to tell them so they're aware that this is what can happen. And again, obviously with the females as well, they get a lot more manly features and so on, you know, facial hair and so on. Okay. So you kind of scare them, you know, long term, where you can see the stunted growth they can get, this kidney problems. I mean, we've heard of cases where athletes have collapsed on the playing field, like in football, because taking stuff they shouldn't, their body can't handle it. So that's what happens there. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of this, but yeah, there's a lot of side effects with it. Okay. Diuretics. This is where, you know, it's usually in the sports where they need to lose weight, you know, weight categories. So athletes take a lot of this, but this has a whole host of complications as well, which the athletes can get, which athletes need to be very aware of. Okay. All right. Stimulants. I know this is also becomes a bit popular, especially with the females, where they want to lose weight quickly and so on. But what happens with stimulants is it increases your heart rate. And when heart rate increases, blood pressure increases, your body can't handle it, heart attacks happen. Ephedrine was a popular one that was in the market a good few years ago, then it was banned and so on. So your athletes rather just stay away from all of this. And again, the DAHA, again, there's so much of research to show negative effects of it, but athletes sometimes can't seem to see it. But I just tell them it's because you smoke in it. There's research that shows it messes up with your brain and your memory. So that's why they're not thinking properly, you know. So there's lots of reasons, you know. And as I said, they need to have proper base where you get your information from. Okay. All right. Just to round up something interesting, I enjoy showing the athletes because lots of them ask, why do people have to watch me pee? I mean, they're looking at me. I'm so nervous. How do I do this? So the reason why we do this is because athletes cheat. Now, we got to make sure we catch them because you don't want to be competing against somebody that has an unfair advantage. So remember, I mentioned the process is very standardized. So a doping control officer, before we go in and we set up our station, we go and inspect the toilets. So we make sure that the toilets are cleaned, it's flushed, we know what is where, to an extent where we know which way the door opens, you know, it swings open and so on. That's how strict they are. Because what happens in the past where athletes don't know, you get your friend to pee in the toilet. Don't flush the toilet, obviously. So when they go in with a cup, they just scoop up the urine and give your friend's urine. We actually had a case a while ago, probably about 10, 12 years ago, where it was a home test out of competition. So we went to the athlete's house and then it wasn't so strict and, you know, as maybe more than 10 years, 15 years ago, where the athlete came, he gave us his sample, only to find out when the test was concluded, he was pregnant. So he gave us his wife's sample. So you can see why we need to go in to make sure the urine is coming out of your body. So that's the one. The second one is athletes get a lot more advanced now. So, you know, they strap on their upper arm. This is a little bag of urine, and then the pipe runs down their hand. So when they pee, you know, you don't see it. In the past, athletes were allowed to use their jackets and clothing. So we never saw this bag strapped on and the pipe. Now your athlete, remember that picture I showed you? They fully exposed. So their arms are exposed. Usually the guys just take their shirts off. The girls have to lift their tops up, tuck it under their bra and pull their shirts, sleeves up. So it's full exposure. So we got to make sure that they're not cheating this way. But everything gets a bit more advanced. So what used to happen is went to such an extreme where there were fake penises. Imagine. But I mean, if you look at this looks like really fake. I mean, come on, how can you not notice that this is fake or not? Again, with technology, things improve. It's ridiculous what goes on. That's why we need to be there in the room with the person looking to make sure. I mean, this may seem funny. I know the athlete's like, nah, who does this extreme? But believe me, when there's money involved and this is your career, and if you need to try and get away with it, you'll do anything. And how we know about it, there was an actual case where an athlete had a fake penis. So it's quite crazy. In saying that, it's not only the guys that cheat. There's ways that females cheat as well. So you must be thinking, how does that work? Let's show you. So there was an athlete, and how we only learned about it was obviously she got caught. What the athletes do is they take a condom. They would fill it up generally with urine, and then the ladies insert it into their vagina, basically. And what they do is when it's time for them to pass the sample, so some of them grow their nails a bit long. So when they're just about to pee, they just rip the condom with their long little nail, and then whatever is in there comes out. But how we caught this lady, she wasn't the brightest. She put whiskey in it. So that's how, yeah. So that's how we found out about it. Yeah, so people try ridiculous things, and it's enough, it's a swimmer as well. I mean, you can see, but not from here. All right, so people go through extremes in order to try and cover up and cheat, So that's why you need to be informed. As a coach, it's so important, the information you give to your athletes and what you tell them. Okay, last one quickly. I think this is my last one about the whereabouts. Remember I mentioned if your athlete is on that registered testing pool, make sure they say where they are, their whereabouts. There's an app where they update it. Because remember, if they miss 3 tests, then it's a positive, and it could be the 1 year or 2 year ban. Just depends on that. Okay. So everything I've spoken about is on the website, except the pictures with the penises and the condom. But yeah, the information is there. If there's anything you're not sure about, I mean, you can always contact the agency or myself. And yeah, that is me for now. Thank you. Any questions?
Right, thank you, Rowena. Very informative. I definitely learned a thing or two. So I really hope the coaches also picked up on some stuff. And I really think there is possibly a need to educate athletes a lot more on this topic.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat.
Great.
Besides positive feedback, thank you, very informative. Yes, we all seem to have learned quite a lot this morning, so that's wonderful. Okay,
Great.
yeah, Rowena, I don't see any questions. Coaches, if you have any questions, please email me. I'll forward on to Rowena, and as she did say, everything is available, but if there's something you need to know directly from her, she is available to us.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. This was good.
Thank you.
Great. And yeah, I will be in contact about the next workshop.
Yeah, great. Lovely. And coaches, please spread the word. We have another one again on Monday, the 3rd of April. It will be an evening session again with Rowena, so please let all coaches know.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank you. Have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.